The final talk is about reimagining patronage as a form of practice between Ugoma Ebele and Femi Lajedu. Against the backdrop of ongoing economic and political uncertainties, what is the role of the collector? Does the collector remain the greatest cog in the wheel of progress for the new artist, as declared by the late pioneering artist Uche Okeke? This discussion centers on the contemporary sphere of influence within which collectors operate and the manner in which their patronage can enliven the production of art. But before we get started, I would like to welcome our sponsor, Olumide Oyeton, the CEO of Stanbic IBTC Pension Managers.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So it's a pleasure to be here once again. I believe I speak the mind of everyone here when I say that we live in uncertain times. I think we just have to look around what is going on in the world today. Let's not mention the war. Russia, Ukraine, Palestinian, Israel, Gaza. However, as a people, the question we must ask ourselves during times like this, how can I make a difference? Ladies and gentlemen, it is my utmost pleasure to welcome you to this talk aptly themed, Reimagining Patronage as a Form of Practice. I trust that it will be worth your time. When we think of African art, we think of our history and how it continues to help us tell our stories and preserve our heritage. However, perhaps a more intricate area of consideration is the collector's role in art preservation and the future of artists and curators. This is why tonight we will be discussing the collector's sphere of influence and how patronage can enliven the production of art. At Stanbic IBTC Pension Managers, we believe that art opens us up to a world that allows for unique truths and authentic perspectives. We have our resilient Nigerian artists to thank for their continuous tenacity in telling our stories. We also celebrate platforms such as ArtX that remains committed to furthering the cause of African artists, budding and established alike. And we say thank you for the work that you do in giving African artists a global platform on which to elevate their work. The group in focus today are art lovers and collectors who almost singularly wield the power to define the trajectory of new artists. To moderate the conversation today on reimagining patronage as a form of practice is multi-award-winning art curator Ugoma Ebele. Thank you for that. She will be discussing with one of Nigeria's most respected art collector, Femi Lajedu. I've always been intrigued by Femi's versatility, combining a robust law career with writing, literary articles, and exploring the arts. I've also known Femi for a very long time. I'll tell a little secret. Back in the days, Femi and I used to do karate then, and he used to kick my ass. So, the importance of African art to us as Stanbic IBTC Pension Managers cannot be overemphasized. Just as we are an institution committed to raising the standards and leading initiatives that will better the lots of those who trust us with their future, we are also committed to driving Nigeria and Africans' growth. And we know that we can do this through conversations such as this. We hope that this conversation inspires you to view the collector's role differently and hopefully start to contribute your quota to advancing art in Nigeria and Africa. Here's to a robust and rounded conversation today. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, good evening.
That's the specials, a message to you, Rudy. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Artex, for this platform. And we're going to be having a conversation, Femi and I, today, even though you're here, but we're having a conversation because I think the heart of patronage, collecting, and the relationships that exist between collectors and agents like me, at the heart of that is a level of intimacy and responsibility, which is why I started the session with that song. That song is important because the trajectory of the relationship between collector, in this case, and gallerist, in this case, has always been music, intimate moments, kindness, friendship, true time spent to learn about art, artists, the issues that go on. And many of the transactions that end in Femi having a sculpture or painting start with very, very intimate things. So there's a friendship and there's a genuine interest in my well-being. And I've learned so much from Femi through music, and we've shared so much. And this dancing thing you see, I think, is not unusual. And I hope many other gallerists have this experience with their collectors. And if they don't, and if we're on the journey to make sure that patronage becomes a practice, then we will have many dancing moments around art and sculpture. So that's why we started that song, and we'll hear the rest of it later. I want to just say again, Femi has one of the most eclectic collections that I've had the privilege of being around. I'm proud to say that I've led him to many things that he loves. There's nothing more exciting to see a grown man, a very respected lawyer, light up like a child because of a piece of art. He's literally one of the mad ones. He's dedicated. He's fingers in many pies, of course, ArtX being one of them. And I would just like to ask him a few questions about his journey so far. Femi, you like to say to me that you're not a collector. So I'm going to just say that in this conversation, we will overlap the word collector and patron many times. At the end of the conversation, we may decide that the collector is a patron or not, but I will overlap those words many times in this conversation. So tell me about your patron journey, if you do identify as a patron, and just walk us through that. What does patronage mean to you? Where are you now with that?
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. I think, we started with music, and of course, all art forms are connected in some way. And so the distinctions between them, or the models that we use to analyze them, are artificial. They are a representation of reality, and not the reality itself. So you have to start with disruption. And so in your minds, we start with music, and then you translate that into the visual arts that we're talking about here. So that song was a message to you, Rudy. And in a way, what is that message? And I think the message is that, for human beings, meaning is central. And why do I say that? So you're planning for your future. So you go to IBTC to plan for your pension. And then in the last quarter, you've attended about 6 Owambes. Owambes are Nigerian parties, very loud. And you get home after parking your G-Wagon. And then you wonder why your life has no meaning. Then you end up in our text. The answer is here. So I think the meaning is a central motivational force for human beings. I also think that one of the reasons why, in a way, I sort of shy away from labels is that that's exactly what they are. They are labels. And I think for me, and for people in different ways, collecting, as it's called, is instinctive. And anything that is done instinctively, at least without, deliberate or conscious learning in the past, is, you could say, is innate. So it's an impulse, the impulse to collect. Why do you think those cavemen started making drawings of the animals they were hunting, or the sun, or the sea, or the fish? So it's innate in human beings. And then in seeking to understand it, we now put all these structures and say this is modern, this is postmodern. It's all connected, and all the art forms are connected. So I think there's a sense in which, while falling into categories, we must not allow ourselves to be defined by them. And so if you look at the music, while I was coming here, I was thinking that there were a number of titles of well-known songs that in a way reflect the disruptive nature of art and its impact in our minds. So anyone who wants to come here and go away with a nice definition of what it is to be a patron, a collector, and so on, well, may find themselves surprised. And you may recognize some of the titles. So I could say that Art and I got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper spring. But I can't get no satisfaction in these nights in white satin. But there's a sense in which it doesn't matter, because they're going to send down the rain. And she loves me, yeah, yeah, yeah. In a way, there's nothing more to say than that, when we're talking about art. So that's why I think, we're in a category, and let's try and move it from status, I am a collector, to function. So, okay, so you found yourself being a collector or a patron. So what are you doing? What for? Who for? And we find ourselves here because we need meaning in our lives. We need significance. And you keep coming back to Art X, and you wonder why. There's something about when you are here that's magical and makes you start to understand who you are and why you are. And that's, I think, too, even though we're biological entities, it's so much a part of what we are. So, so I'm a collector, but I'm a human being, and I'm a lover of art, and I react to what I see around me, just like every other human being. So there's a sense in which we all are, even in the collection of ideas, we all are collectors. And then the question is, when you become conscious of what you're doing and its significance, what do you do with it? Okay, so am I black? Yes, yes, oh, I'm black. Okay, am I African? Yes, I'm African, and proudly so. So what am I going to do with it? What's our position in the world? Where can we be heard? Where can we be seen? What are we saying? Look at the disruptive, sorry, this is a long answer. Look at the disruptive effect that, and subversive effect of music. No state support, no planning, and just see how Afrobeat has conquered the world. And the same is happening with art. And why is it? It's because our culture, African culture, is so strong, it's so rich, it's so irrepressible, that even when we don't try, it seeps in everywhere, and in buses in London, Rome, Moscow, Beijing, people are singing, Wizkid, and so on and so forth. So, so I think art is it's not something by the side of what we do, it's central to what we do, and whatever category you feel you fall into, you have your role to play.
Thank you. You talk about it being an intrinsic part of your life. So I know for a fact that when you go to Femi's office, Ukiri Lijadu's office. So Ukiri Lijadu is a partnership, but they're also two men. The collection that is in that office, is that because of you and your partner? Or is it now because of the firm, as a result of you and your partner leading the firm? Or are they the same thing? I'm using this as a segue into corporates and their role, or corporate spaces and their role in actually inspiring this idea of patronage or participation. Because you can't go to your office and not ask questions about art. You have been a sponsor, a long-term sponsor at Artex. You're a board member at Artex. You're involved in so many gallery interventions. And I can sort of speak about myself and so many people in this place who wear many, many hats. So in a way, that patronage is buying art, it's lending books, it's sharing music, it's talking about music, it's crying sometimes, it's giving loans, it's sometimes food, it's so many things. In your case, there's an office that's sprawling with art. I want to just have an understanding of how that's come to be. And is this something that will continue if it becomes Ukiri Lijadu and somebody else, or Ukiri Lijadu even leave the building?
Thank you. I think it's quite personal. I think, you know, as you grow older, not that I'm old, but this is what I hear. As you grow older, you start to wake up in the middle of the night, and you wake up because of inconsistencies where you're not aligned with what you truly believe in. So, if I love art and I'm a lawyer, are they separate things? Or even in what I do, should I reflect what my core love, what my core beliefs are? And the implication of that is then your office now becomes an extension of yourself, what you believe, what you're doing professionally, but also mixing it up with what you're passionate about. And I always tell the lawyers in my office, who sort of sometimes make fun of me, Chike is here, so he probably has the same thing, is that, you know, oh, wow, so you come here, you see these beautiful paintings. At the beginning, maybe you don't like them. Then after a while, you get really attached, and you start to distinguish between them, to see more in them. And you think it's not connected with the law that we do. Of course it's connected. Your eye gets sharper. Your ear gets sharper. Your life becomes filled with the colors that you see. Your sensations and your emotions are moved depending on those shapes, even in ways that you're not conscious of. So for me, it's part of aligning the environment in which I live and work with my core passions and what I believe in.
I think that's really beautiful. So your home, your office, your friendships, your interactions. Is there anything in the Nigerian context, which is challenging, as we know, and the world is challenging, but Nigeria especially, is there anything more that you would love to do, or that you really feel guilty about not doing at the moment as this man with this passion and this itch to impact his world? What is it that you're not yet doing and want to do?
I think you made a mistake in talking to a lawyer and mentioning the word guilt. I'm not guilty of anything. Jesus. And in fact, as I was coming up, a few people mentioned to me, do your top button. This is my act of protest. I'm not doing it. It's okay. So very, very much being here is an act of protest, an act of rejection, an act of redefinition. You know, and that's what art is all about. I think it's all aspirational. I know what art has brought to my life and the richness it has brought. But I also have to have the humility to say, what I'm doing, where I am now, for our ancestors that came before, what we as a people have been through, what can I do to move things forward? And you know, we have here with us a lot of great people. We have Ngone here. I mean, some of you don't know some of the things she's been involved in, but she's really spearheaded, and she's the alter ego of the late Bissy Silva. You know, the French speaker who can express herself in English, and the English speaker, Bissy, could express herself in French. And together, they took the world by storm, and they're still taking the world by storm by the power of what they have done. So, I find myself here. I buy art because I love it. It fills my house. I wake up, I see it. It gives me pleasure. We all love it in our house. Ima, my wife who's here, the children all love it. And then I begin to get some feedback from the ether, from outer space, from the ground, from the ancestors, that what you're doing has some significance. So I think part of the challenge I think I have to put to myself is, okay, so what does it mean and what do I say now? People have gone before, people have suffered, people have learned. You know, our parents bought art, our parents were artists. You know, so where now? What does it mean? What does it say? Why am I in this condition? Why do I have an ability, if I do, to transcend cultures and to join them? Why is it that people come here and are seeking for something that gives them their true identity as Africans, of which they're proud, which is not necessarily reflected in the formal structures of communication that we see outside here? And so for me, the challenge for me would be, okay, Femi, how can you be that thing? And how can you excel? And how can you serve that transformational purpose? I think for me, that's really the challenge that I see thrown to me.
Do you find that you share this, I guess, sense of commonality with other Nigerian collectors, or this word collectors? Because, I mean, we're obviously in, we have work to do. There's no doubt about that. Do you find that you can express this to others? I mean, you can express it with me, yes, because I'm unusual, because I'm not just collecting, but I'm a gallerist, and you have lots of wisdom to impart to me, not just because you've been on this earth longer than me, I heard, but because it's just the fact. But do you have peers that you feel you can align with on these types of things to maybe even make this very likely to happen? Or do you find yourself a bit frustrated and alone in the context of Nigeria as this really conscious patron, feeling patron, lover?
I think, you know...
you can feel free to name names of people who you do share this sort of sensibility with.
I don't know, you know, there's something about people called Femi. I don't know whether you've been checking online, but Femi, you know, there's something about people called Femi. So we have here Femi Akinsoya. Please, Femi. Maegon, please stand up. So, so he's a great collector, and now it's important to talk about him because he's a symbol and represents more than what his name means or indicates. His collection spans our old, traditional, ancient forest and trees and art, and also the modern and contemporary, because it's totally an artificial construct to think that they're separated. They come from the same well, it's the same forest. If you don't know what was happening in the forest 2,000 years ago with Nok culture, or even before that, how on earth do you expect to understand Uche Okeke, not to talk of some of our more younger, Ndidi Dike, or some of our other modern artists? There's a straight line, and those divisions, so we have to break down those divisions, and then to be our full selves. And so he has a unique collection that where even unconsciously, your heart and mind will trace the connection between the old and the new. So well done, Femi. So I think, you know, all collectors have what they bring. Some people have money. Money is good, so they can buy anything, and they do buy anything or everything. That's also fine. It's part of the ecosystem. But there is meaning in collecting. There's meaning in art, and I think connecting with that meaning is where, you know, you now see some kind of transcendence in terms of the role of the collector, the role of the patron. And you know, we spoke earlier about how music has been able to go universal and worldwide with basically zero state support, zero funding. And, but if you're a collector, I work in commercial law, so I can see that the ecosystem for the growth of art doesn't really exist. So what can you do to make that happen? And we have real treasures, and I'd like to mention Bisi Silva again, because she's not in this sphere with us anymore. But what she did was so far-reaching and foundational that everything we are doing, this very event, is somehow connected with her pioneering lonely work years ago and passion when no one was interested. And we have many heroes. We have many heroes like this. Some are here, some are abroad. Ngone is there. It's so nice that Ngone is now coming to support us. So we have an international network that we can use to unite, to really grow. We have people in the States doing wonderful academic work, you know, and there's so much data and analysis that we need to do to redefine ourselves, to speak for ourselves. And it bears repeating, because, you know, even in art, you know, if you look at the lines in a painting, the strokes, repetition also plays a role. There's something about repeating something. Even, you know, in the flow of the rivers, the waves in the sea. So that repetition, that self-assertion, that reimagining who we are and speaking for ourselves, which we repeat again and again, will infuse the younger ones coming up. And so there's a sense in which we're all here today to free ourselves from mental slavery, as Bob Marley said. And so that's what we're going to do.
You speak of lines, so I want you to talk a little bit about a particular series, and I ask you this because I want us to just soften it up a bit. It's obvious we have a lot of work to do. I think that what you said about the lonely work that is being done, I think just to add to what I think patronage is, for example, when it's not just about buying things, patronage is about identifying those people doing the lonely work and lending a hand, whether it's through funding their research, their travel. I mean, I've been personally supported by the Ford Foundation for travel. I've needed to move from A to B. Sometimes that's patronage. Sometimes it's lending books. Sometimes it's just listening. And I think that one of the things that we would do better as collector patrons in the Nigerian context is maybe to listen a bit more to those lonely art workers, because they're there. And I hope that maybe with this sort of world crisis, we can't really seem to hit these wonderful prices that have gotten all of us excited in this era. Maybe we go back to the drawing board and start again to sort of really, really support the base so that when we do rise again, we can stay a more sustainable place so that it's fairer and we're all pulling ourselves together at the same time. But I wanted to go back to the lines. You talked about lines. And I know, for example, you've been hanging around very recently a series by Benewonwu, which is his Ogolo series. I've seen you many times in many rooms react to Ogolo, a masquerade, which has nothing to do, well, actually, maybe it does, nothing to do with direct heritage, but I've seen you react, almost cry. And I would like for you in lay terms, because I think this passion and love, this love that I think we're sometimes very afraid to allow ourselves to feel, is what starts the collector, patron, art buying journey before the money. And I want you to just talk through, because you're so poetic, Femi, talk through the lines, the curves, the moves of these Ogolo paintings that you see in many different rooms. Some you can buy, some you cannot, but every time there's a reaction. In a lay way, please describe this in a lay way for students, people who've probably never even seen a Benewonwu before in real life. I want you to just take me through that romantic description of the feelings of that series, because I believe it's probably your most, I think it's the one you react to the most when I've been in front of you. Ogolo, not any other thing.
Ogolo, I'm not poetic at all. I'm a poet. So let's get things straight. So Ogolo, well, you don't even need to know what it means or its significance, but it does help if you do. But you can see in the colors and in the shapes and in the movement in an Ogolo. Ogolo is a traditional masquerade from southeast Nigeria. And we have our cousin Colette here from Jamaica, so she's the one that I'm explaining to. And Enwonwu often portrayed Ogolo in their dancing form. Very graceful and expressive dancing shape. But when you look at it, it sort of evokes a whole era. And it does reflect part of what, you know, the Zaria rebels, Uche Okeke was trying to do, which was to move away from the received, you know, instruction of the Western sort of metric, and to create a new art which was not rejecting anything, including the Western influences, was like recreating and redefining and letting Africa speak for itself. And I know that Uche Okeke, other members of the Zaria School, Wole Soyinka, so on and so forth, it was quite a lonely time in the 50s and 60s. But the things they were talking about were prophetic and are echoing now. And that's why they can connect with us now. It has taken some time. You know, in the euphoria post-independence, where you had a sort of effervescence of artistic activity, and where the artist and the art was at the center. There were people in society. You know, all of a sudden, we had interruptions, and then I think the status of artists and the status of art went down. But now you can see a resurgence. I mean, I hear stories about people like Benewanwu and Okpu Eze. When they entered a room, you knew they were there. They were not sided, you know, they spoke, they were opinionated on anything. They had spoken to the Queen, you know, and so on.
The Queen had sat for him.
Exactly, sat for them. And so we're seeing that, you know, it's irrepressible. So the status of artists is coming up. And I think Ogolo, in a way, for me, emphasizes the connection, the graceful connection between the past and now, and possibly the future.
Do you think that, thank you, I mean, anyone, we hope that with our collective efforts in this patronage journey, and I think with interventions that we see, of course, at Artex, even though this year we don't have a modern section, but hopefully by next year we'll be back to that, with spaces like the Yemisi Shillong Museum, with what Coronation is doing with its gallery, of course the offices of Access Bank, which is essentially a museum, and whether you're a banker, you bank with Access Bank or not, I think it would be worth going into that building. But I think, of course, as we can't really ever experience these works, hopefully the patronage effort will get us closer towards museums, or quasi-museums, or homes as museums, or offices as museums, so that we get to see some of these gems and pieces of art that form part of our real heritage and can help us on, I guess, in the understanding of who we are and where we're going to. I wanted to ask a very naughty question about whether you thought a patron could be poor. So, can a person without money be a patron? Do you think?
Okay, so what is patronage? Did you know that I think for most artists I've found, money is not the issue. Sometimes it's just even someone to talk to who understands a little bit what they're going on about. You know, that's serious patronage. That's moral, intellectual, spiritual strength that can enable them to survive, you know, anything. And you know, because the artist sometimes is gifted, and then he does something that's far greater than him, but he doesn't understand why. But you know, as you tend and you grow and you start to understand why, you can survive anyhow if you understand why. So understanding why is the foundation. It's the ideological, philosophical foundation. So just sitting down, talking, saying why do you do that? This is how it makes me feel. Is this what you are thinking about? Supporting, encouraging. I think that's the first thing. So a patron can be poor, but we're using poor in a very limited sense, because a patron who's capable of doing that is not poor in any sense. So you step outside here, you think because somebody has a G-Wagon, they're rich. Forget about it. This is our text.
G-Wagons? This
is our text. We don't think like that.
Do you think, have you found, I mean, you're obviously a bit of an anomaly, but have you found it have you found any boring and I would say, non-courageous trends in what Nigerian collectors are collecting? And do you also think that almost, as you said, stubbornness, you don't want to button your shirt, have you found that you've also been able to, in your confidence in yourself as a patron or collector with your own aesthetic ideas and your right to do whatever you want, have you been able to educate other collectors to be free, to truly go towards the art that is interesting and brave, as opposed to what everybody is going towards?
Yeah, well, as social beings, biological organisms, so we organize ourselves into society. So there's a lot of comfort in doing what society approves of. And so doing the same thing as others is an often beneficial function for a human being. Now, in terms of collecting, there's a sort of tension between the subjective, which is that if this is art for me, it's art for me. I mean, I can define what art is. At the same time, it's part of it's a cog in a larger wheel, a larger universe. So there's meaning, and the more you connect with that meaning, perhaps there's more influence. So I think that in a society where people are not too sure of themselves, you'll find a lot of copycat. So it's very popular to have 3 women with gele, or a market square, someone selling tomatoes, or the Argungun festival, and those are all sort of like legitimate subjects. Yeah, but what do you have to say about them that hasn't been said before? That's what we want to see. Turn it upside down, Translate, communicate, dare. Because if you're an artist, you dare. Say what you need to say what you want to say. So I would not purport to teach anyone, because I myself need to be taught. But what I would say, and we're seeing that evolution, is that things are changing very quickly. Especially, the younger generation are open to far wider forms of art. And the limitations, perhaps, of our forefathers or ourselves may not necessarily apply to them. So, but I would love to play a part in accelerating that process, and accelerating it in art. It's been accelerated in music, in theater, and we have Ifoma over there of, Hear Word, so we can create a sort of confluence, and that confluence will transform the world, not just our world. It will transform the world. And why do I say this? Okay, there's those who know me will know there's a poem by Philip Larkin that I always refer to, and it says, it moved forward with the power that being transformed brings. And so we slowed again, but as the tightened brakes took hold, there raised a sense of falling, like an arrow shower, sent abroad, somewhere becoming rain. So that's the power of transformation. It's incredible. You can be just sitting down, and people tell you it takes 5 years, and in 5 seconds, 5 minutes, it all changes. Now, art can do that. An injection may not be able to do that, or your computer may not be able to calculate it. But art can do that. You find this, you see something, it moves you almost to tears, but you don't understand why. You go home, and then by the next day you've woken up, you've forgotten. So you sort of go back into your fake reality. But art can draw you back into reality. So I think that's really the power of art.
Thank you so much. You mentioned about the younger generation, and of course I'd just add the younger generation of collectors. Are they having conversations with you? Are you having conversations with the young collectors? I'd say there's been a tech boom, from my perspective as a gallerist. So I'd say that there's the classic collectors, and then there's now a young generation of new collectors who are very excited, as I said, as you said, enabling this diversity of aesthetics, because they also like many, many different things. Are you finding that they are seeking counsel from collectors in your ilk? Are you having interesting conversations? Are you meeting at all, or are they just doing their thing and you're doing your thing?
I don't know, those of you who like literature will know George Orwell, Animal Farm, so all the animals were in the farm, right? And they were all equal. They were being oppressed by the men. And then by the end of the story, the pigs have spearheaded a movement to overthrow the men. But in the final paragraph, I can't remember which animal it is, but the horse is looking at the pigs having taken over the headquarters. And he looks at the pigs, he looks at the men, and he can no longer tell the difference between the two. So why do I tell that story? I absolutely refuse to be categorized in a form that creates a hierarchy. So you come to me, Femi Lijadu, to teach you. No. The hierarchies tend towards tyranny. So all of a sudden I have this status. Okay, dollars are flowing out of my ears, and I'm a collector, and I can dictate to everyone, including the artists and the whole ecosystem, what they are to do. That's not what it's about at all. So I think two things in responding to what you said. One, anything that takes attention away from the art itself and the artist is secondary. So we so-called big collectors or patrons were secondary. We're there, we're utilities, we're instrumental, if we're lucky, to embellishing the world. And then the second thing I think is that those conversations are actually taking place with those who have ears to listen and eyes to see. The interest that ArtX has generated shows how much different generations understand, appreciate, and want to know more about what's happening in the art world. And not just people in Nigeria, but our friends from all over the world. Can you imagine? I can remember when all this was an idea. Is Tokeni here? It was an idea in Tokeni's mind. It didn't exist in the real world. And then she now creates something, and all of a sudden it's a place where things are happening because there was a need, because the universe was calling for it. So she was just an instrument, and there's a sense in which we're all just instruments. So those conversationals should not be hierarchical, vertical, but they should be horizontal, they should be diagonal, they should be all over the way. And I think we have as much to learn from the new ones. I mean, when someone's telling me this NFT, put on your laptop, put this disc in and then see this image, well, I need to understand, okay, what does it mean to you? How does it relate to what I like, so on and so forth. So I think it's like it's a rich and it's a democratic conversation, but we're not here for politics, are we?
Speaking of NFTs, because I'm just going to interject with some of the questions, because I was told that there are questions coming from the audience. You said you just segued into NFTs, and I was never going to, but I think it would be nice to ask your opinion. As a long-time gallerist and collector, what's your take on NFTs and the disruption they've brought into our space? Since you've spoken about disruption, I don't know who this is, anonymous.
Okay. I have a bit of a contrary view because, I suppose, as a lawyer, I've seen many changes. When the telephone came, they said it was revolutionary. When Gutenberg brought the printing press, it will be the end of the world, things will change. So it may well be that NFT is disruptive and revolutionary, but until then, it's a channel, like other channels. It's a medium, But let's see. Now, could there be some badges of the application of technology to the arts that are transformational? I think yes. So the fact that now anybody with a phone or a laptop can actually look at things, you can go on Artsy, you can get an NFT wherever you are in the world, and this thing about breaking down barriers. But it's just the same way technology is breaking down barriers in all other aspects of human endeavor. So we have to wait to see what is truly transformational about it. And then let's think about what Wittgenstein said, which is, you see, language it's like magical. And we express ourselves, we analyze the world, we explain it through language. But sometimes it's a trap. You can get trapped in that a problem is not a real problem, it's a linguistic problem. So for example, if you look at the way, if you're talking to somebody who is from Africa, even from where you come from, and they're speaking English but translating, now if you go to London and someone says, let's have a meeting at 2 tomorrow, Femi, and you say, fine. In Nigeria, if you say, that person is fine, no, it's a completely different, so words, words are so important. And I think, the language we use can sometimes bewitch us. And so we need to, when you talk about NFT and being transformational, please tell me, I need to have it explained to me what that transformation is, other than the fact that technology is being applied to the art world.
I guess you've, in summary, said that what I've heard is that, you don't quite understand it, and so you're staying where you do. I wanted to, there was a quote I heard the other day about how collecting starts with reading. And I guess in a loose way, it means just trying to understand better. How much of your collecting approach is instinctive, and how much of it is sort of long-suffering based on long research and this sort of reading? Are you an impulsive collector, or do you go on these long journeys of understanding before you arrive at what you allow yourself to fall in love with?
I don't go on any long journey of understanding, no. Reading article, no. It's the, it was, who was it? I think Hazelberg who said that problem with life is that it's lived forwards, but understood backwards. So me, I buy what I love, and then I start understanding it later. So I do the research, but the initial thing is, it's from the heart, it's instinctive. And I see something, and then it makes me wonder, oh wow, why did that move me? And I can share something with you. I remember that performance art sort of left me indifferent. And I think it was Artex several years ago. There was a piece by Wura, Natasha Ogunji. And it was two ladies who were standing on a podium, two separate podiums, and they had a twine or string, and they threw it down, and then they were gradually putting winding it around their face. And they were both saying, you loved me when I was beautiful. Now that I'm no longer beautiful, will you still love me? And they kept saying it. And as they were winding it around their face was getting distorted, and so it was becoming more and more muffled, until finally the string went out and you could hardly understand what they were saying. And I'm telling you, I was thinking about that thing for 3 years. Why did it move me? Why did it make me feel that way? It was a revelation, and that's why theater, that's what we all love stories. We love myths. Myths are stories about ourselves, our divine selves, And so there's a way that art connects with you that is instinctive, but you can also learn through studying. And I've been very lucky to have come across a number of people in the past. When I started, someone like Chike Nwabogu, Folabi Kofo, Abayomi, and of course now Ngone, all the other people I speak to, who in conversations with them you learn so much. I'll never forget, there's a lady called Fernanda. I think she's Spanish, but she speaks fluent Yoruba. She works in one of the American universities. And I remember her telling me about repetition in Yoruba language and even in Igbo tradition. And then she related it to some of the Inca and South American, we're human beings, so we have the same DNA, We have the same, central core nervous system. And we have this aspiration towards meaning. So it's no wonder that we sometimes find unity in what moves us, whether it's a song, whether it's an image, or whether it's a sound.
I think that we were meant to. There was a particular challenge that Mr. had wanted us to discuss about this cog. He says that there's the text from Uche Okeke, and you mentioned Uche Okeke many times. And of course, Uche Okeke is important because he wasn't just a painting artist, he was a teaching artist, and he was a writing artist. And we have a lot to give thanks for Uche Okeke and what he put down. And if you are ever trying to go on any journey of studying or reading to understand what you're seeing or loving, whether it's before or after you've bought your pieces, I think it's a worthwhile effort to research Uche Okeke. But one of the sort of assignments we were given by the curator was this phrase which Kofo said at the beginning, and I'll just read from this excerpt of this essay that Uche Okeke made in the 70s. It says here, Nigeria has a very rich and varied past. She's rich with such great ideas as helped bring new life and fresh sources of inspiration into Europe at the dawn of this century. But it is a well-known fact today, and of course that's then, that the greatest cog in the wheel of progress of the new artist is the curio-hunting tourist or patronizing art lover collector who expects him to go back to what he considers his glorious African past.
That's an interesting story. So you're an artist and you're moved to create work. And then you come face to face with the market. And the market starts telling you, oh, paint black faces, and you'll sell around the world. I remember in the 80s, a story that Muraino Oyelami told me. He said he once painted a picture of a lady, and he sent it to the client who had asked for it. And she said, the lady doesn't even have earrings. She sent it back to him, said, put earrings on it. So who's in control, I think that, really the artists who are true to their intrinsic motivation and their passion and have integrity at the end of the day, because it's so real and it connects with something really significant, they will emerge at the top of the game. If you're reacting to the environment, what is currently fashionable, you may find that it may not be lasting. And it may be a misapplication of your skills. I can understand, there's pressure to be commercial and, you have to eat at the end of the day. But what will really, the best food you have is your integrity and conviction of what you're doing and the creation of a language that you're communicating to the world, which eventually they'll understand and to lift you up and propel you beyond your dreams.
And that originality, which of course is enabled by, dedicated patrons who allow you to stay on that almost lonely, stubborn road if you have to. But it's also the role of the collector. So the collector can be an interferer and disruptor, but it can also be an enabler. And it's almost like, which do you decide? Is your collection deep or wide? Do you have a lot of the same artists because of your affection and connectivity with those styles of work or that artist? Or do you almost feel a responsibility to include everybody because of this responsibility? You have to uphold the entire space because there's so much creativity, there's so much art. How do you balance? Because I know different collectors do both.
No, I don't feel any duty to include everybody, but it's also part of my personality. I'm not sure how Femi and Dr. Suleiman and so on and other collectors are, or even Chike, but I'm not one of those people who is so disciplined that even what they don't like, they can collect or discipline themselves to go through with it. No, no. I have to love it. Passion drives it. And when there's passion, everything else falls into place. I think, some people can be more rational and logical about their collection and say, okay, given this is where I am, this is the direction I need to go. I may not actually react to it now, but it seems to make sense with me from a curatorial or philosophical or ideological point of view. So I think, it depends. I would say that my collection, by the way, is deep and wide. Thank you very much. Now, the reason I say this is that it didn't happen like that, because I collect what I like. And we tend to be a bit obsessive. So I have a lot of the same people. But when I started liking something, then that would draw me to something else, which would now draw me to something else. And then initially, I only ever bought Nigerian artists. In fact, I started with the Oshogo artists, Rufus Ogundele, so on and so forth. And then I sort of then discovered Benin Okboeze, Ben Osawe, and so on and so forth. And then now it's evolved where I buy a lot of African artists. But that path was organic. I had to grow to be able, I had to almost like, through what I was doing, educate myself to the next step. And in that sense, it was very, very fulfilling. So that's why I would claim, in my humble view, that my collection is both deep and wide.
Can you tell me some of the artists that you have some really, really good, you share a great friendship with, that's living? Because you're a great conversationalist. I mean, we do this for hours and hours in Bloom. But which of those artists? I think I might want to suggest that you tell me a bit about your relationship with Segun Adejimo. But I think that maybe you might just share which other artists you share this friendship. Yes, you collect them, but you also share a friendship with.
Well, if you're looking for, if you want to be a legend and to live forever, then involve yourself in the arts. So there's a sense in which no artist is dead. They're alive through their works. But what I'd say is that I really have developed enriching, and deep friendships with some of the artists. Segun Adejimo is a great friend of mine. In fact, he was also in the karate class. I don't know if you remember. And it's funny how art happens. Because I remember one day we finished, he was leaving, and he had these scrolls of paper on his motorbike. I said, Segun, what's that? He said, it's a piece of art. I said, what are you doing with it? He said, I'm an artist. He said, show me. So he just put it on the ground. That's how I started. This is 1985, I think. And he's extremely talented. And, I think, for, many of us, okay, maybe I should ask a question, rhetorical question, so don't purport to answer. Whatever you studied, did you study it because you loved it, or was there some kind of external push, whether from parents or what you think would be good? Now, he's so talented, and for me, within the constraints of the law, perhaps there's not enough room for expression of creativity in that form. And so I'm sort of inexorably drawn towards the artistic world. And the funny thing is that, when I'm in the office with my law hat on, words are tools to be used with precision. The way you change a word, leave it in or not leave it out, and how you string them together, can be traps, they can be precision, can give accuracy, so on and so forth. But in the artistic world, I'm sure that if I play some of the conversations you have with an artist, it doesn't make any sense in the rational, logical, but there's a way in which it sort of makes sense. Do you know what I mean? So there's a whole range of our emotions and our lives that cannot be reached through straight, linear, left brain thinking. And that's almost anthropological. And so art really plays a very strong role in bringing together those two falsely separated worlds, which is like spirit and then, reason and logic. Because, in the Western world, they talk about, the Enlightenment. Yes, the Enlightenment is fine, but that's not the whole world. There's a world before that. And so how do we connect with our whole world? which has to do with our traditions, which has to do with our culture, so on and so forth. So I think that, that conversation or those conversations are really, really, really enabling from the point of view both of the artist and of the patron. But they must be guided by the artist.
I'd like to throw in another person or another member of that ecosystem, especially in the case of Nigeria, which would be, for want of a better word, the gallerist come agent come curator. Do you also think that those agents are important and even considered also patrons, or can play the role of patrons? And do you also share special relationships with gallerists? Because if you think about the last 10 years, there's so many more gallerists working for artists today than there were. Do you recognize that addition to the efforts of moving us all forward? And so do you therefore enable and support them? Or do you think that they're on their own and it's still the collector and the artist?
It's very interesting. Those of you who went to business school, well, if you use Michael Porter's 5 forces, if you use Michael Porter's 5 forces to analyze the art industry, you'll see that there's some very weak areas when it's looked at from a formal point of view. So the role of gallerists in terms of selling is very strong, but in terms of promoting, developing, encouraging, and setting the narrative, it's still relatively weak. And so the role of collectors is still quite powerful because sometimes they bypass the gallerists and create a direct connection with the artists, and through that means are able to influence and to encourage. But I think that we all have an interest in developing a very, very strong ecosystem that supports the artists and the art that they're creating. Very quickly, to go back to the question you asked before, I have a strong relationship with someone who's here, Ndidi DK, and but it just started over coffee, and this person is strange, and she's, but I'm also strange. So we got along like a house on fire. But you cannot imagine how wonderful it is to see the artist bloom, evolve, and grow from a very lonely place. And it really is, at the end of the day, it's not about the collector. It's about the artist, the art, the significance, our history, and our identity.
Do you, I'm going to take some questions now because we have 12 minutes, but I wanted to just ask quickly, do you think that, 2 questions, there's a trend now that is happening globally, and it's interesting to me because I'm often asked the question about value. And because of this frenzy, many collectors, buyers come to me to ask what to buy that is valuable and what to buy that will be valuable. And I'm always stuck because I have one answer, which is not always very polite for them, because I ask the collector, what is value and how can you create value? Because the idea of finding something that is already done and cooked and you can just gain from it and run away is very strange to me. But there was something that I heard this summer, and it was that, and it just proved what I think, and I want you to agree or disagree, that the collector creates the value. So the artist has worked, but what then makes your collection valuable is almost is your responsibility. The collector, the personality of the collector, the responsibility of the collector, the gravitas of the collector sometimes can actually answer the question of giving value back to the work, as opposed to you looking for it from a magic gallerist or a magic artist. And so this idea of joint responsibility in creating a value, I wanted you to just talk a bit about that and what you thought is value. Okay. Is value the high price? And is value something else? Is value pricing, or is value something else to you? And who is responsible for creating value?
Okay, this is almost a matter of religion and ideology, because the question is value intrinsic or is it attributed? If it's attributed, then you have to look to the attributors to determine the value of the work. If it's intrinsic, then it's there, it's eternal, it's there forever. And the discovery by the market of that value is not creative. It is just declaratory. It's declaring the value of what already is. And I belong to the second school, that it doesn't matter if no one thinks this is a valuable work of art, if it connects with you. And if you want to analyze works of art the way you analyze shares in the market, then you'll be limited to the kind of dividends and market fluctuations that you can only get in the market. But if you want to put true value, what you might say almost like the psychic, if you want to get the psychic dividends, then come to the other side.
Did you, so I don't know who has questions, and do I give the mic, or do I? Yeah? Okay, oh, Slido. Femi, just before I ask the audience to chip in, did you become a collector, or do you feel like you always were? And I want you to sort of refer to, maybe, we're starting at the end, but maybe go back to the childhood, because that was the question I should have asked, but I'm happy to ask now because you like to do things and then go back and research. So did you become a collector, or were you always one? And I want you to answer that because I want to answer that to let people know that maybe there is a path to becoming a collector, even if you haven't been born exposed to art, exposed to books. There's a school of thought that says that you're either one or you're not. I belong to the school that thinks that you can become a collector, and I wonder what you think.
I think you can become a collector, but I mean, for me, I was lucky to be born and to see art around me and to see beauty. And then acquiring art was a way of internalizing that beauty. So you love a poem, so when you recite that poem, the beauty is with you. You love a painting, you're able to get the painting or a representation of it, and then that beauty is with you. And that action that has an effect on you, which is a communication between you and the work of art, you then now have for yourself. So I think, there's something in the nature of many collectors, which is they're trying to acquire that meaning and that significance, which they see reflected in the works of art that they acquire or that they see, and to bring it into their lives and to become part of it. Because when you think about it, the way any of us achieve excellence is by watching excellent people and then trying to replicate what they do. I mean, they say that the greatest number of Nobel Prize winners have worked with former Nobel Prize winners, because you don't get it from a book, but you're sitting there where this man or woman is doing things, and you are gaining and learning just by seeing and doing. So I think that, I hope that sort of answers the question in a way.
I mean, it definitely, I believe it's infectious, and I think it's, sort of these kinds of forum, the idea of, I guess, breaking down walls where this concept of art being absolutely elitist and inaccessible, which is, again, all our responsibility. Because I almost dare anyone, I mean, people often, I run a gallery in a salon style, and my challenge is that I dare you to spend time with me or us and not fall in love. And most of the time, people don't have the access to falling in love. So I do agree that we can. And I think that when people, just for the general audience, and I don't know who is listening, and I think it's wonderful to use this opportunity to say that while maybe the easy thing to think about art being inaccessible because it usually exists in spaces that are inaccessible. Again, kudos to artists for breaking down those walls. But I think for all of us who do have that privilege is to explain to people who want to engage with art that sometimes it's enough to just see the art. It's not always about buying the art. It's about engaging with the art. It's about having conversations. It's about being around it. And once we, I guess, de-emphasize the fiscal conversations around art, we're already on a journey to starting inclusion, because that's the way we can build a generation of collectors and build a generation of empaths and patrons who care about many things, not just the buying side. We have two questions. I think we can take two questions. Joy Tom Tom wants to know what's the most memorable or impactful artwork in your collection? What's the most memorable or impactful artwork in your collection, and why does it hold such significant value for you? And a naughty anonymous person wants to know if you've ever sold pieces from your collection before, or as a collector, do you never let anything go?
Yes, I've sold. Yeah, I've sold before, especially when part of the problem in the development of the art scene in Nigeria in the last like 30, 40 years is that initially there was no price transparency. So, art was being sold in kitchens and people's sitting rooms, so you couldn't really know what the extrinsic value of a work was. And so initially when the auctions started, and people started having more disposable income, and young Nigerians or middle-aged Nigerians started buying more art. For it to grow, for a market to grow, there needed to be more price transparency. And so the auction houses that existed then would need to have art to sell. And that's what persuaded me to start selling, because even though I love my art and I didn't want to let go of them, I could see that this would be transformational, and it turned out to be. And initially, the auction houses were local, and then now they're global. So you could say to some extent that as soon as credible value started being attributed to it, it jackpotted out of the country. So part of the challenge we have is, how do we make sure that, we do not automatically transfer value outside Africa. And when I say transform value, I'm not talking about the physical location of the works. It's about ownership, it's about identity, it's about attribution, it's about recognition, So I think that's really how I would address that. Yeah.
Binkwe wants to know, do you think that patron/collectors have a responsibility to support the ecosystem by supporting the establishment of infrastructure and models that are lacking? And I think I'd like both of us to answer these questions. So the Binkwe is that, do you think patron/collectors have a responsibility to support the ecosystem by supporting the establishment of infrastructure and the models that are lacking?
Yeah, I always hesitate about the ought, because, none of it is a matter of compulsion. But if you were to ask me, ideally, would a collector or patron who's becoming more and more conscious about the significance of art and the significance of what he's doing, deliberately or more consciously try to grow the ecosystem, try to address issues of communication, trying to make sure that art was more accessible to more people, to explain the art and to draw people and educate people towards it, to empower the artists, both psychologically, ideologically, as well as financially. I would say yes, in an ideal world. But you don't want people to run away because, okay, you're a collector, so now you must do this. No, it doesn't work like that. I think in the ecosystem, there should be enough people who will gravitate towards doing that to make it work. But once we become conscious of it, more people would want to participate. Because in a way, if you're helping the art sector to grow, you're also helping Africa to grow. You're helping your identity to have more respect throughout the world. So I think those are things that would be compelling for many people.
But in a way, do we have a choice to not do that? I mean, you said it's not an issue of ought, yes, but can we afford not to do that in the context of the African art ecosystem? And even in terms of maybe not compelling people, but maybe inspiring potential inspiration as collectors who have already agreed that it's our responsibility. I almost think that you've said yes, but you said it shouldn't be we shouldn't compel people, but maybe we have to find creative ways to do that, because I don't know how we can not get involved with all our privilege.
All hierarchical systems tend towards tyranny.
Okay, we can agree to disagree. Cheryl Cheryl Finley wants. Oh, we're out of time. Do I have to stop? Can I take 2 more questions? Thank you, Cheryl. Would you please, and we can answer this together, you first, me second. Would you please share examples of patronage in action within the larger arts ecosystem to support and develop artists, institutions, and educational access? And I think she's asking this question, of course, in the Nigeria context, but you're free to answer this in the maybe West African or African context, to share examples of patronage in action. And I think it could be individuals or institutions, and maybe answer it like a roll call, or however you want to share actual examples.
Yeah, I think there are many examples. A lot of the collectors stroke patrons that I know are involved in something other than just buying and collecting art. So you'll find them on the board of this, advisory board of that, not necessarily just by way of title, but they're actually doing something, yes, actively to move the agenda forward. And I think also a lot of artists find someone with whom they make some kind of connection, and that person can encourage, help, support. I mean, I know people who sometimes have helped artists to travel, to acquire a booth, to show their work, and sometimes that has been crucial in putting the artists before their audience. And then from there, it just, takes off. So I think we have a lot of examples of patrons who are doing far more than just acquiring a collection. And I think when the activities of the patron are actuated by love and passion, it naturally flows and develops into that system. But then at a certain point, you now have to think and say, okay, how can I do this more efficiently? And how can I make it even more profound, more significant than it is? And through that, we have the guidance of people who understand art history, who understand about curation, who can make connections and link that maybe we ourselves are not, aware of. And then the network grows and grows and grows, and we take over the world.
Yeah, I am Cheryl. Thanks for that question. I think to just add to that, I would say in Nigeria, we have, as you said, the boards. We have people who are actively involved in art institutional boards. We have probably too few people who are involved in the institutions. The academic institutions are in dire need of patron support. So if I was to answer your question, I would say what we would love to see as patronage in action would be more support for the academic institutions, more libraries. I mean, CCA is essentially a dinosaur because it's the only place where, well, now the Gas Library, so the Gas Foundation is doing very important work. CCA continues to do important work. Lots of collectors actually have turned themselves into schools, museums. Like collectors do that through their offices, through their homes. And I think that patronage in action is probably something that's still work in progress. But it's supporting in any which way, as our conversation has highlighted. It's maybe sometimes the council. It's 5 minutes in your office to be able to direct an artist who's, struggling with the pressure of having to paint yet another figure, but his spirit wants him to go abstract. Maybe it's a travel grant. Maybe it's supplies. Maybe it's lunch, where they can discuss. I think that patronage has so many faces, and for patronage to be in action in Nigeria, we have to go back to, I guess, our cultural inspirations, because what patronage looks like in Lagos may not be what it looks like in Dakar. It definitely is not what it looks like in London. And I think this network and asking and figuring out what holes need to be plugged is key. I think that we've run out of time, but I would like you to maybe sort of just say your last shout out, your message, not to Rudy, but your message to the audience, which of course, I'm proud, consists of artists, collectors, journalists, students, just the curious public. I think a word for all of them to tell them or advise them on how they can help the patronage effort in whatever silos they may be in. What's your last shout out to this wonderful audience?
My last...
What's your message to Rudy?
Yes, a message for you. I think, you know, we need to reinforce the good stories. We need to make noise about the bright spots and then connect all those bright spots until the light is everywhere. I'd like to mention the CCA, the Bill Bissy founded, the knowledge, the data she has, the library, the work that she has done there. These are resources that should be available to everyone, and people should refer and support that kind of process. Of course, Artex, look at this place created where we all come seeking significance and find it in some ways. Yinka Shonibare achieved fame and success in Europe, but he didn't stay in his artistic palace drinking champagne. He spent his money, created a foundation here, created a residency in Ogun State, repaired the road, created a farm, brought people, used his fame and the success he had, not for his greater glory as a patron or successful artist, but to help the infrastructure, to help the ecosystem. We have to help ourselves. We have to do it for ourselves. We all have a role to play, however small. So I would say, you know, everyone here should become an art revolutionary. And aluta continua.
Thank you, Femi. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, my message, just to buttress that is, yes, we do have to emphasize the good stories. We have to go back to love. Let's all make the effort to plant the trees that we will not necessarily sit under. And this concept is, I think, at the heart of art collecting, art love in the first place. But what will drive us towards this art life and art love will drive us towards our love, our society, building our community, building our continent. We forgot Baba Bruce and Hamatan, just to answer Cheryl's question from before, the Hamatan workshops. And I think that just as a final note to say that I think there's something very special about, and history has shown us, especially our Nigerian history, the special place is reserved, it would seem, for the artists that also threw the ladder down. And it would be the same for us and whoever, the ones who throw the ladder down. There's a special, unique place for the ones who throw the ladder down. And for those who can, we must throw the ladder down. I think that's my last message. And would say thank you for your time, Femi, for your poetry. Yes, please.
I'm a lawyer, so I'm usually paid to talk, so you should be happy that I'm talking for free. I just want to say that, you know, a lot of us will have heard of Festac 77. So, but you look around you in the physical world, there's no Festac, you can't see it. So what it is you're hearing about, what is it that moves you? What happened? So this place we're here now, people will come in 50 years' time for this place, trying to grasp and understand what it was. So we're at a point of inflection. Let's take it and let's catapult it into a brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Tokini, do we just leave the stage? I wanted to ask for that song to be played for you to enjoy your way out. Thank you for your time, everyone. And
thank you so much. No, you can sit. Thank you to Femi Jadu, our truly special patron and friend and advisory board member of Artex. Thank you to Ugoma Ebila, longtime exhibitor, friend and equal soldier, fighter. Together we're in this. Ladies and gentlemen, just to share with you a very small number of closing words, because as you know, the fair will end in 30 minutes, drawing to a close our 8th edition. We simply want to thank, and I stand here on behalf of Team Artex, to thank our speakers and moderators. Today we have listened to Ibrahim Mahama, who is still with us in the audience and sat through all conversations. Ibrahim, thank you for all that you shared with us. We listened to the remarkable, iconic Professor Bruce Onorbakbeya at 91 years strong, sharing with us with such power and such grace and humility. We thank our moderators, Mr. Lipsakau, who spoke with Ibrahim. We thank Ifoma Fafunwa, who spoke with Professor Bruce. We thank Femidi Jaju and Ugoma for these really insightful conversations. And we thank our sponsors. I thank Olumide here, CEO of Stanbic IBTC Pensions, who sponsored this talk, and all our other sponsors who have made this year's fair possible. We all know the year that we're living through. We all know what is going on in this part of the world and so many parts of the world. And honestly, at Team Artex, we continue to reiterate what a privilege and honor it is to be able to do this and to provide this space for us all at this time. And I think our experiences together over the past 4 days have shown that we must continue to try to keep moving forward. We do this for a variety of reasons, and there are too many to name. Too many to name. As you know, our theme was the dialogue, and we sincerely hope that this program this year, this multidisciplinary program across art, literature, film, music, has sparked something within you. And that the conversations begun at this fair, whether it's through Artex Cinema, Artex Talks, whatever it may be, will continue and be endless. Our team is very excited at your response to the changes we've made. I don't know if anyone in the audience wants to give a simple vote, but we've been told that this amphitheater here at the center of the fair is something that everyone wants to see again. So that is honestly such a remarkable breakthrough for us. And I continue to give a very special shout out to Papa Amotayo, also our board member, exhibition designer, and an artist in this year's fair, who we've workshopped this with tirelessly. We've had more international visitors this year than ever before. So many groups that came, all of their own initiative, from the US, from France, from Italy, South Africa, from Russia, from all over. We are really privileged to have played this catalyzing position for Lagos, the emergence of the Art Week and season in Lagos. And we hope to only continue to grow this from year to year. For us, this is a service and work that we do for Lagos. But it's also to create a Pan-African reunion that serves us all. We really want to hear from you. We would love to have your feedback, because if there's anything that unites us as a Team Artex, is that we always want to do better, and we always want to outdo ourselves each time. And to ensure that this platform that we've been building for you, together with you, continues to achieve what you desire for it to. So, you have 30 minutes left to explore the projects, the galleries. If you haven't yet recorded your thoughts about Nigeria in the MOA, Museum of West African Art installation, I invite you to do so. If you haven't yet partaken in The Hands That Remain by Papa Amotayo, it's a very emotional project, I invite you to do so. If you haven't yet colored on the wall for Painting Building Victory, the offshoot of Dennis Osadebe's Passing Building Victory on the importance of teamwork, I invite you to get a marker out, scribble, do whatever you wish. Express yourself, enjoy yourself, soak it all in. The galleries as well are to my left. Please explore and continue with this experience for the time that we have left. And then please, wherever you're from, tell your friends about this experience. We're building a community here. We're building a family. So many of us reunite at Artex Lagos and see ourselves and connect. We want that community to grow and to grow from strength to strength each year, and thus far it has. And we're very privileged. Thank you for enabling us to play a role in the advancement and enrichment of our society. We're really honored and privileged. And on behalf of Team Artex, on behalf of our board, I issue my thanks to every single participant this year, and we look forward to seeing you next year. Thank you very much.